starting pitching, are you going to look to go after an ace that you know is going to get it done for you, even after a few maybe bad starts? You know that player can turn it around, or are you going to be sticking only for value when it comes to pitching?
No, I might try and get one big arm. I'm going to see what the prices are in the room. There are a lot of pitchers I like in the mid range, a lot of pitchers that in the 20 to 35 range that I'm kind of high on, and I've had several pitchers move up my board that I have not gotten yet that I kind of want. So I'm going to pencil in probably to try and get one, but I'm going to see what the prices are, especially early on. But there's definitely some guys near the top that I'm really not that interested in. So I want to see what price they go for, and then I'll figure out accordingly where I want to go. But there is someone that I have probably higher ranked than anybody. I mean, I haven't checked everyone's rankings, but I'm pretty sure this pitcher, I don't think anyone has him higher than me.
No, well, who's the pitcher?
Mike Clevenger.
All right.
I have him ranked third at pitcher.
Nice. I'm trying not to have you give away all of your strategy here.
That's all right, man.
But the rankings are out, man.
They are. But these guys need to pay for it, though.
Yes. FantasyAlarm.com/NFL draft guide for our fantasy football draft guide. But you also get, for the 1997, you get our fantasy baseball MLB draft guide, the Jim Bowden draft guide that has Ronis' rankings in there that he's updated 500 times in the last 2 weeks. So it's been a very eventful week. That's why he's got a little bit more gray on his head, Adam Ronis. Ronis, I got to ask you this because I think it was you I was talking about it with, and you kind of just brought it up again, and that was daily format. I'm sorry, man. Maybe you'll disagree with me. I don't remember if it was you that originally did. I don't understand how fantasy baseball leagues are weekly format this year, man. It just seems like if we're setting up a last-second league, why make it weekly at this point? We need more access to our teams in such a short season.
Well, if you're setting up the league, yeah, like this GDD auction was supposed to be weekly, but because we didn't draft and it was postponed and we are doing it tonight, they decided to go daily, which I'm fine with. I mean, I don't mind daily leagues at all because I'm always going to set them in advance and I always make it a priority. I mean, look, I know everyone has different things in their lives and people have things like animals and kids, which I'm not aware of. And I don't know how that messes up your life. So I get it. And I have more of an opportunity, but I always make it a priority to set my lineups. The issue, though, with leagues that already drafted under the guidance or the idea that it was weekly, it's hard to change those because people probably had certain strategies or went in, specifically like a guy like Shohei Ohtani, and they said, yeah, it's a weekly league, I don't want him. And now you can't just draft under the guidelines that it was weekly and then switch to daily. So that's the biggest problem. And I know the GST league that we run where we patterned it after the NFBC, we did the draft in March and said it was weekly. So I don't think it's right now to say, all right, guys, we're going to daily. So any league, and the same thing with Labor and Tout Wars, we drafted those leagues thinking it's weekly. And especially a lot of people play 7 to 10 leagues that are in industry leagues, and they probably wouldn't want to play in 10 daily leagues because it is a lot of maintenance. So I think that is the main issue. So for me, I think my home league is daily. We've always had a daily. We make the Fab waiver wire moves twice a week, Sunday night, Wednesday night. And so that'll be daily. The GDD will be daily. And then my other leagues are all weekly. TGFBI is like NFBC, so we get to change our lineup on Friday. And I have less. This is the fewest baseball teams I've had in like a long time. I think I'm only 6 season leagues, and I think I did 4 or 5 draft champions leagues. So it's still a total of about 10 steady lineups, but usually I'm in the 12 to 15 range. But backed off a little bit this year.
Yeah, it's probably smart. Again, it's hard because this is a year unlike any others. So you're trying it out at this point, and then next year, hopefully, we're back to normal strategy for a full season. Ronis, you have been covering some of the high-stakes fantasy baseball leagues, and I want to know from you if there are players that stick out in your mind who you've seen rise or fall a lot when it comes to ADP over at least the last month, as now we get just so close to action beginning.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of guys that either are going to be the designated hitter in the NL or guys that have, gotten health. I mean, probably one of the biggest risers is Rich Hill. I saw him go in the 9th round of a high stakes league last night. And what's crazy about Rich Hill is he was available on the waiver wire in a lot of leagues. So my TGFBI league, Rich Hill was available, and I was like, all right, I could use a pitcher. So I put in a bid of 368. I thought that was reasonable. He went for $726, which
Wow.
I think by far was the highest. The runner-up was 501. So I still wouldn't have gotten him. But there were other leagues where there were some leagues where he went for less than 100, which is, again, I've said this point many times, and I've written this article. I did an article in the Fantasy Baseball Draft Kit on approaching FAB in the high stakes leagues. Fantasy football, I just last week released a FAB article, waiver wire strategy. And I've always said FAB is one of the hardest things to give a guidance on because, okay, say someone wrote a FAB article leading up to this week. All right, Rich Hill, yeah, spend, 35 to 50% of your budget. All right, fine. I gave you that line and say you said, you know what, I'm going to go a little bit higher than what Ronis said. I'm going to go 560. Here in this league, you weren't even close. Whereas in another league, the 560, you might have overbid by $300. So especially now with 60 games and we're keeping the same FAB for almost every league that I've seen, it's kind of difficult to figure out. Isaiah Kiner-Falefa, that's another guy that's seen his stock rise because he's catcher eligible, and it looks like he's going to start at third base for Texas. And I know he doesn't have a great track record when you look at his career, but he's a guy that was tearing it up in March, tearing it up here in the summer camp, and at-bats mean everything. And maybe he cools off, but I'm definitely taking the shot. I mean, he was someone I was looking to draft in March. I drafted him in the GST League in March as my second catcher. So I put in a bid for him in TGFBI. He went for $501 to Nando DeFino. That's right, baby. I spent that money. I made it rain like I was in a strip club. So he went for 501. The runner-up was 92. So it was crazy. Like Zach Britton, that's another guy that's risen up. Now it might only be a week because Aroldis Chapman could be back. But Zach Britton, I need a closer. It's a 15-team league, and I came out a little light on saves because I just didn't invest enough. I forgot who. Oh, I have Taylor Rogers, so I like him. And I also picked up Tyler Rogers in this FAB period for the Giants. He might close. That's funny because I got him for 33. There was no runner-up bid. So I'm okay with that. It's $33. But Zach Britton, my bid was 87. It was the runner-up. The winner, 342. So in my league, you could see there was aggressiveness. Yoenis Cespedes is another guy that's moved up. He talked today that he expects the DH most of the time. He felt good. He was actually drafted in some leagues. It's crazy. I went back to one of my leagues, and like all these guys are drafted. I'm like, what the hell is going on here? But Cespedes went for 211. I was the runner-up at 118. So of the top 4 players, I was the runner-up on 2 of them. At Corey Knebel, maybe he gets some saves if they use Josh Hader in the 7th, 8th inning. He went for 97. I was the runner-up at 33.
I'm seeing the pattern here, Ronis.
I put in a lot of bids. Some of
no
these.
Wonder why you can't hang with me Sunday nights.
Yeah, exactly. But the guys I did get, I got Tyler Rogers for 33. I got Jay Bruce for 22. The runner-up was 1. Like, I don't know why. Like, Jay Bruce has power. He's playing for Philly, especially when there's right-handed pitchers on the mound. So I was happy to get that. And then I picked up Brian Abreu for $12 because just in case he closes for Houston, probably not going to happen. Ryan Presley was dealing with a blister. It looks like he's okay. He actually started today's game. There was rain in the forecast, so they decided not to pitch Josh James and have his outing cut short. So Ryan Presley started this game, but it looks like he will close with Osuna out. So he's a guy that's going to rise up draft boards. But Abreu has got a good arm, so I took a flyer on him. I might wind up cutting him at the end of the week. But, yeah, and I saw this sentiment on Twitter, too, where some people felt that there were a lot of bids with no runner-up. So I don't know if people didn't realize FAB was running. Did they forget? Maybe their teams are so great they didn't need to make any drops. But, yeah, I mean, I kind of saw it in my league. There was some pickups with no runner-up bids. Yeah, I mean, labor, I only made one move. I picked up Zach Britton for $8. That's out of 100 because I have Roberto Osuna on that team and Tony Watson as well, and he might not close for the Giants. So I already might be light in saves. And I can't start Roberto Osuna on this short week because he's probably not going to be ready. Interested to see if they put him on the IL. So I kind of hope Britton can get me 2 saves this week. And then I might have to be aggressive on a closer that emerges. That's a 12-team league, so it's a little bit easier. But I went through that roster. I just really didn't have many players to drop. I wound up dropping Cole Hamels because he could start the year on the injured list. But there were other players that I didn't like. I didn't want to drop Freddie Peralta, the Brewers. I kind of want to see. He's probably going to start the year in the pen. But the Brewers, I think, are going to have a quick hook with some of their starters. Peralta could come in, go 3 innings, strike out 6. So I didn't want to get rid of him. So I didn't have as many drops. I didn't have Chris Sale, Noah Syndergaard, any of those guys. Even in Tout Wars, where Fab is yet to run, I have Austin Meadows that I could put on the injured list. They have Scott Kingery listed there on the injured list, but I think he's going to start the year. So,
and how many IL spots do you have in each of these leagues?
Tout Wars and Labor are unlimited. TGFBI has none.
Really?
My home league has 5. GST league has 3. So it's kind of different across the board.
How do you have a league with none, Ronis?
Because they pattern it after the NFBC. TGFBI is run on the NFBC platform. NFBC does not have injured list spots.
Wow.
You have 7 bench spots.
So pretty much this league this year is going to be a hellhole, being with COVID involved.
Really, I mean, look, they don't want the waiver wire to be empty, and that can happen if you have these unlimited IL spots. This is a 15-team league with 30 roster spots, so you have 7 bench spots. I'm kind of fortunate right now. Looking at my team, the only guy that I have that's really dealing with an injury or COVID is Austin Meadows. So
that's your boy.
It is. Kind of need him back. Looks like Blake Snell's going to be good to go. I did this draft back in February and drafted him in the 3rd round, and I kind of need him to be good. But, yeah, I mean, look, if you get hit with a bunch of COVID spots, you're going to have to make tough decisions. And that's what they kind of want, in these high-dollar leagues. You got to make tough decisions, even though TGFBI is not for money. It's just for fun, bragging rights. But, yeah, there's no IL spots. So looking at that league, yeah, I kind of have one closer, Taylor Rogers, Scott Oberg, who could emerge maybe for the Rockies, and then Tyler Rogers for the Giants maybe. So, yeah, I'll be spending money on closers this year off the waiver wire in my leagues probably.
What are some of the key stats? And I know it's really team by team, but especially without that sample size to prove whether or not this player is on a good streak or not, because we really don't have that kind of time this year, Ronis. What are some of the key stats you'll be looking at every single week when you're doing Fab? Because it's going to be the most challenging Fab year for fantasy baseball that we've ever faced.
No, it is. And you kind of already saw it this week. It's kind of hard to pinpoint stats because – after a week, yeah, you're going to see someone with a high batting average balls in play, a hard contact rate that's high. You'll see some unluckiness in pitchers, but you can't really judge after a week or 2. Even 3 weeks, it's just not a big enough sample. So you're going to have to, go with those stats and say, all right, well, maybe this could be true. You're going to have to, do the eye test, seeing what you see in games. But that's the thing is we just don't have patience this year. You really have to make tough decisions where you're going to have to move on from players or bench them, especially if you start off slowly and you're near the bottom of the standings. It's tougher to be patient. You can't stash as many players. But that's the other thing, too. Like Spencer Howard was another guy. He wasn't available in all my leagues. I drafted him in my home league, but he was available in my GST league, and I did put in a bid for him of like 3-something. He went for like over $700. That's a guy that's not going to start the year in the rotation for the Phillies, but it appears that some of these rookies will be up after 7 days. I mean, we got news today that the Dodgers are not going to have Gavin Lux start the season with the Major League team. They want him to work on his swing, but he could be up within a week. But he still might not see everyday playing time. We know the Dodgers love to platoon. They got Chris Taylor, Kiki Hernandez. So, Lux, I think, was a guy that people were counting on. And now you have to wonder, especially if you're in a weekly format, it might be tough to play that guy. If he's playing 4 times a week and you can't change your lineup on a Friday, I mean, you're losing at-bats. Daily format, a lot different. You could just look at the lineup each day, he's in or out, and make the decision accordingly. But at-bats are going to be so important this year. And if you look at the standings at the end of the year and you look at the teams that are near the top and you sort by at-bats, they usually have more at-bats.
When you're spending your Fab, and you talk about some of the strategies that go into it, does it change sport by sport for you, especially when looking at football versus another sport? Is there a certain amount of money you want to leave for yourself for the final portion of the year, or is it all based off need for a particular season?
Yeah, it's a little of both. I mean, need obviously is an important factor. I talked about the FSGA football league that I won last year, but I was 0-4. So even though the total points mattered for me, it was week to week, and I didn't care. When you're 0-4, you can't think about week 11, 12, and 13. You might be done by then. So yeah, by the time that end of the year came, I had no fab left. Fortunately, there was first come, first term after waivers ran. So yeah, by the time we got to the end of the season in the playoffs, I had no fab. So I couldn't get my first options. Obviously, if you get off to a great start, you're 4-0, and you don't have major issues, and you didn't have to, your team is loaded with depth, yeah, you can be a little bit more diligent in your spending. As I wrote in my article, though, you can't ignore the waiver wire. Still put in bids, and especially if you get off to that good start, you can stash a little bit better. You can put someone on your bench. So it really comes down to where your team is at. Baseball, you might be able to stash one player this year, maybe one. You can't do multiple. You're going to get hit with injuries. Guy's going to sit out. Hopefully, you do have IL spots. But, yeah, it does come down to the team. I think this year, too, you can afford to be aggressive early on. Again, I thought I was kind of aggressive on Rich Hill. I thought 368 was a decent bid, and it would have won him in a lot of other leagues, but not mine. So I never thought about going 726, so I can't sit here and go, oh, man, I thought about going 730, and I never did. No, I mean, that guy really needed him. I didn't even look at his roster, but he probably, had a major hole. Maybe he lost Sale and Syndergaard. I don't know. That dictates it, too. I mean, that could have been the case. Maybe he had Sale and Syndergaard or one of them, and he said, man, that was a guy I was counting on. Now he's out. I got to go all out on Rich Hill because he's on a good Twins team. Gets the Royals and the Tigers, and we've seen when Rich Hill's healthy, he can perform well. It doesn't mean he won't get hurt. He's 40 years old. But, it does come down to individual circumstances. And I think the teams that, maybe had no closers or closers lost a job went aggressive. But we're seeing the news change. Like we found out today that, late last night, Kwang Hyun Kim for the Cardinals might close. I mean, I have that guy in 2 leagues, and I was tweeting with someone about it. I think it was Al Melchior of The Athletic. He's like, oh, good job picking him up. I'm like, nah, I kind of got lucky. I never thought Kim was going to close. I picked him up thinking he could start, and I had him in 2 leagues. And then they said Carlos Martinez is going to be in the rotation, and Kim is an option to close in the bullpen. So kind of weird because he didn't close before. We know Giovanni Gallegos just got to the team. There was talk about Ryan Helsley closing. He's a guy I drafted in Tout Wars. So, you got to really pay attention to the news very closely because it's going to be wild. Even these last couple of days, I mean, we're getting news like every hour of the day, and it's really impacting the value of players.
Yeah, it really is, Adam. And that's the big thing. If you could give one piece of advice, and I guess you just gave it with the news cycle, but if you could give a piece of advice to someone who maybe isn't a novice, but more of an inexperienced player going into the war zone that is fantasy baseball for the 60-game season, what piece of advice would you give to them? Because for me, I would say, don't be too in love with your team all season long because just when 50% is over, it's going to be just like that. So for me, it's you got to be aggressive on waivers. You can't be as attached to a lot of your players. Core players are one thing. Beyond that, everyone at this point is when it comes to some kind of rotation of your teams, you can always find someone else out there.
Yeah, I would say don't sleep. Make sure you stay awake for 24 hours for the next 60 days, 66 days. I think you just need to constant monitoring of your team, man, and don't get attached to any players. I mean, obviously the guys you take early, you're going to have to ride or die with them. I mean, are you really going to bench Ronald Acuna or Nolan Arenado or Alex Bregman?
Well, that's why I asked you, Ronis, on
I don't think you can.
Powers, whether or not you would cut bait with a first-round pick or a second-round pick if after 4 or 5 weeks they're doing nothing for you.
Well, after 4 or 5 weeks, well, depends where you are in the standings, but right. I think you got to ride or die with your core guys. I know, again, this year it's tougher to be patient. it means not stashing as many players and moving on from the mid to lower range guys. Maybe there's a guy you're like, you know what, I think he's gonna overperform this year. People are sleeping on him, and he's terrible after 2 weeks. Yeah, that's a guy that you move on from then. But it's hard. I don't see how you do it. Like, I just can't see. I have Yelich. Even if a month into the season, am I supposed to just say, oh, this guy sucks? He's hitting 180. I'm expecting him to hit 450 the rest of the way. That's why I drafted him early. So I think with those guys, you just ride or die with them. Maybe people disagree with me, but I think with the early core guys that have done it and have a good track record, I think you just sink or swim with them. It's the other guys in the double-digit rounds that, you kind of move on from quickly, especially if you see someone get hot off the waiver wire. And that's the thing, in the past we would go, well, yeah, this guy's hot now, but look who he's faced. Look at the pitching. Hey, all it takes is another week of it. Like, say the guy gets hot Friday, Saturday, Sunday. You pick him up on Sunday, you put him in lineup next week. If he hits 4 home runs the next week, hey, he did his job for you.
Right. Big time, big time. How do you find good core players? You get Adam Ronis' rankings as part of the Jim Bowden MLB Draft Guide at FantasyAlarm.com. Your last second drafters, where are you guys? I'm telling you, you're going to get that itch, Adam. I'm telling everybody. As soon as the regular season, it becomes so real on Thursday, a lot more people are going to want in on some kind of season-long fantasy baseball contest. He's Ronis. I'm Fensty. Catch us on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio for Alarm After Hours, Tuesday through Thursdays from midnight to 2 a.m. Eastern. Ronis, good luck in your auction tonight. You might get your butt kicked by Jen Piacenti, but it's okay. I'm still kind of rooting for you anyway.
Yeah, okay. She's not kicking my ass.
We'll see. We'll see. You could use a good ass kicking.
60 games, man. Anything could happen. If it was 162, I would bet like my house that she wouldn't be ahead of me.
Yes, and he's got his baked-in excuse already. 60 games. There it is. There it is. So well rehearsed too, Ronis. I love it. For Ronis, I'm Fensty. Alarm After Hours. We both always dominate. Why is that? There isn't any other option. We just win.